First tape 1. The box arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as the rain started. No return address, no sender, just a plain, cardboard box, sitting on my doorstep, like it had always been there. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. A misplaced package, maybe, but when I bent down to pick it up, I saw the label. For Daniel Graves. No last address, no postage. Someone had left it there. I hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. The box was heavier than it looked, the cardboard damp from the rain, the corners slightly bent, like it had been passed from hand to hand too many times. A strange, metallic scent clung to it. If I had known what was inside, I never would have opened it. 2. The tapes inside, buried under layers of crumpled newspaper, were 10 VHS tapes. No labels, no markings, just old, black cassettes, worn down, covered in dust and sticky to the touch. The smell of mildew seeped into my skin as I lifted one out, flipping it over in my hands. I hadn't owned a VHS player in years, but as I stared at the tapes, something about them felt alive, like they didn't want to be touched, like someone had tried to hide them. That night, I found an old VHS player at a secondhand shop. By midnight, I was watching the first tape. I should have stopped there. 3. The girl in the video, the screen crackled to life with static. Then a bedroom, dimly lit. The camera shook slightly, like someone had set it on a nightstand but hadn't secured it properly. A girl sat on the edge of a bed, early 20s, pale skin, long, dark hair. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking past it. And then, she smiled. Not a normal smile, a forced one, like she was trying to convince herself that everything was okay. Her voice was soft, trembling. If you're watching this, I need you to listen. She swallowed hard, looking over her shoulder before leaning closer. I don't have much time. A sharp thump echoed from somewhere off camera. Her head snapped toward the sound, and then the screen cut to black. For the house, I replayed the tape 3 times. Every time it ended the same way. Every time my skin crawled a little more. It wasn't just what she said. It was the way her hands twitched in her lap. The way her eyes darted to the shadows in the room, like she wasn't alone. And then I saw it. The background, the details of the room, the bed frame, the peeling floral wallpaper, the crooked lamp in the corner. I had seen that room before. I knew that house. It was 4 miles from where I lived. 5. The investigation, the house had been abandoned for years. Or at least that's what everyone said. I drove there the next morning. The front door was boarded shut. The windows were thick with grime and dust. No signs of life. But as I stepped closer, something shifted. Through the crack in one of the wooden planks, a flicker of movement, like someone was watching me. I pressed my ear against the door. For a moment, nothing. Then a soft whisper. My name. I turned and left. Fast. 6. The second tape, I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself it was all in my head. I failed. By nightfall, I was watching the second tape. The same girl, same room, but this time she looked different. Her eyes were wider, darker, like she hadn't slept in days. She held up a notebook, flipping through pages filled with frantic scribbles. She was crying. It's getting closer, she whispered. It knows I found the tapes. The camera glitched. For a brief second, the screen flashed white. And then the girl wasn't alone anymore. Something stood behind her. Something tall, shadowed, watching. The video cut to static. And then one last frame. A handwritten message flickered across the screen. Only 2 words. Help me. 7. The missing girl. I barely slept that night. The image of the thing behind her burned into my brain. The next morning, I started digging. Newspapers, online archives, police reports. Took hours. But then I found her. Her name was Rebecca Lane. She had lived in that house 20 years ago, and she had disappeared. No explanation, no body, no leads, just gone. The case was still open, unsolved, but one detail stood out. The last time anyone saw her, she had been holding a video camera. 8. The door that wasn't locked. I drove back to the house. This time, I wasn't just curious. I needed answers. The sun was already setting when I arrived. The front door was still boarded up. But now, something was different. The side door, it was open. Not broken, not forced, just open. Like someone had been waiting for me. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, cold, wrong. The The living room was untouched, as if time had stopped inside this house decades ago. And then I saw it, a notebook sitting in the middle of the floor, the same one from the tapes. I picked it up. My hands shook as I flipped to the last page. A single sentence was scrawled in faded ink. "He wants you to watch." A shadow moved in the hallway. And then the TV flickered on. The next tape was already playing. Episode 2, The House That Watches One. The tape keeps playing. The TV flickered, its screen filled with static. I did not press play. I did not even touch the remote. And yet, the tape continued playing on its own. I wanted to turn it off, to leave the house, to forget all of this. But my feet would not move. The screen shifted from static to an image, the same dimly lit bedroom from the first tape. Rebecca Lane sat on the edge of her bed again. But this time, something was different. Her hair was messy, unkempt. Her hands trembled as she clutched the same notebook. She looked directly into the camera, her lips parting like she was about to speak. And then the image glitched. For a moment, the screen showed something else. A different room. Somewhere darker. A narrow hallway, stretching into the distance. A door at the far end, slightly ajar. And behind that door, a shape. A shadow. Watching. Then the image snapped back. Rebecca was breathing heavily now, her face pale, her eyes darting towards something behind the camera. She opened the notebook, flipping through its pages. Her fingers trembled as she stopped at one. Slowly, she held it up to the camera. The words were scrawled in thick, frantic handwriting. "IT knows you're watching." The screen went black, and in the silence that followed, I heard it. A soft creak from the hallway behind me. 2. The house is not empty. I turned slowly. The hallway stretched into darkness, the only light coming from the flickering glow of the TV. For a long moment I heard nothing, but I felt something. Presence. The air in the house had changed, thicker, heavier, as if it was breathing around me. I took a cautious step forward. The old floorboards groaned under my weight. A door at the end of the hall stood slightly open. I had not touched it. The same door from the tape. I reached for it, my hand shaking. And then, from the other side, a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I pulled my hand back. My mind screamed at me to leave, but my body refused to listen. The knocking came again, and then a whisper. "Daniel," said my name. I ran. 3. The third tape. I did not stop running until I was back in my car. I sat behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The house stood in the rearview mirror, dark and silent, but I knew it was not empty. I could feel it. Something had been waiting for me, and now it knew my name. I looked at the passenger seat. The notebook from the house lay there, its worn cover slightly open. A single piece of paper stuck out, a page that had been ripped halfway through. I pulled it free and held it up to the light. It was another message. "The third tape will show you." I looked back at the house. The door was still open, waiting, and against every ounce of reason, I knew what I had to do. I had to find the third tape. For the storage room, the tapes had been inside the box when it arrived, but I had not checked them all. I drove home, locked every door behind me, and dumped the box onto my living room floor. 10 tapes, each unmarked, each identical. I picked them up one by one, flipping them over, searching. Then my fingers brushed against something. A tape with deep scratches along its surface, like someone had tried to destroy it. It was heavier than the others, and for the first time I noticed something etched into the plastic. Not a label, not a name, just 3 deep gouges, as if someone or something had clawed at it. I hesitated, and then, like before, I pressed play. 5. The hidden room. The screen was dark. Then static. Then footsteps. The camera was moving now, shaking slightly as someone walked through the house. Not Rebecca this time. Someone else. A male voice, breathing heavily. The camera panned to a door. Not a bedroom. Not the hallway. A different door. One that I had never seen before. A basement. The door creaked open, revealing wooden stairs leading into complete darkness. Whoever was holding the camera stepped down, each footstep heavy, cautious. The breathing grew louder, and then the camera turned sharply. A figure stood at the bottom of the stairs, not moving, not breathing, just standing there, facing the camera, watching. The static grew louder, and just before the tape cut to black, the figure moved. Fast. Straight toward the camera. The screen went dark. The room around me felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. And then, from my basement, a single, slow creak, like someone had just stepped onto the first stair. 6. The basement, I was not sure how long I sat there, frozen. I held my breath, listening. The house was silent, but I knew I had heard it. A step, coming from below. My basement door was shut, locked. It had been locked for years. But as I turned my head, my stomach twisted. The door was open, just a few inches, like something was waiting for me to look. I swallowed hard, and then I did something I should never have done. I stepped toward it. The air grew colder with every step. The smell of mildew and something else. ***, something rotten. ***, drifted up from the dark. I reached for the light switch. My fingers touched the wall, and then the door slammed shut. 7. The message. I backed away. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath shallow. The air around me felt heavy, charged, electric. I stumbled into the living room, grabbing my phone. No signal, of course. And then a soft click. Not from the basement, from the TV. The screen flickered back to life, but the tape had already ended. This was something else. A live feed of my living room, of me, standing exactly where I was, watching myself. Then the screen flickered. A handwritten message appeared. Only 4 words. "You should not watch." A shadow moved on the screen, behind me, and then the power cut out. Darkness swallowed everything. And in the silence, I heard it, the sound of something breathing, right behind me. The basement won. The darkness, there was no light, no sound, only breathing, not mine. Something else in the room with me. I did not turn around. I did not move. I barely even breathed. The power had gone out, and the TV screen had gone black. But before it did, I had seen something. A shadow, standing behind me. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. The air around me was thick, suffocating. And then, just when I thought I would pass out, the power flickered back on. The lights buzzed to life, weak and unsteady. The TV screen glowed again, but the tape was gone. The VHS player was empty, as if it had never been playing at all. I turned slowly. The room was empty. There was no one there. But something had been, and it wanted me to know it. 2. The basement door. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of this house. I grabbed my keys and moved toward the front door, my breath coming fast and shallow. But then I heard it. A click. Soft. Deliberate. Not from the TV. Not from the hallway. From the basement. The door that had slammed shut was now open again. Just enough for me to see pure darkness beyond it. And then footsteps. Slow. Coming up the stairs. I backed away. My stomach twisted into knots. The air felt charged, electric. And then I saw it. Something moved just past the doorway. A shape shifting in the shadows. A voice whispered from below, just barely loud enough to hear. "Keep watching." I turned and ran. 3. Nowhere is safe. I did not stop running until I was inside my car. I slammed the door shut, locking it immediately. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel. The house stood silent in the rearview mirror, but I knew it was not empty. Something lived there, and it knew my name. I started the engine. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the front of the house. For a second, I thought I saw something standing in the window, watching me, and then it was gone. I pulled away, tires skidding against the pavement. I needed answers, and I knew where to find them. For the police report, I spent the next 3 hours researching. I dug through old newspaper archives, police reports, anything I could find about Rebecca Lane. There was not much. She had lived in that house 20 years ago. She had vanished without a trace. The case was still open, unsolved, but something caught my eye. The last person to see her alive had been her neighbor, a woman named Linda Hastings. The report said she had moved away shortly after the disappearance. But I found an address. She was still in town, and I needed to talk to her. 5. The woman who knew Linda Hastings lived in a small apartment on the edge of town. When I knocked on her door, she did not answer at first. I knocked again. After a long pause, I heard footsteps. The door opened just a crack, and an old woman peered out. Her eyes were clouded with fear. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Daniel," I said. "I need to ask you about Rebecca Lane." The door slammed shut. I pounded on it. "Please, I just need to know what happened." Silence. Then the door opened again. Linda's hands shook as she pulled me inside. She locked the door behind her. And then she looked at me, her eyes dark and tired. "You should have never watched those tapes," she whispered. 6. The truth about the tapes. Linda sat across from me, gripping a mug of tea with unsteady hands. You said you watched the tapes? She muttered. All of them. Only the first 2, I admitted. She exhaled, looking relieved. Then maybe it's not too late for you. I swallowed hard. Too late for what? Linda's eyes darted toward the window, as if afraid of being overheard. The tapes are a trap, she said. Whoever watches them, they don't just see things. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. What do they see? I whispered. Linda shook her head. It's not what they see. It's what sees them. 7. The missing pieces. Linda told me everything. About the house. About Rebecca. About what happened the night she disappeared. Rebecca had been investigating something. Something she should have left alone. She had started recording herself, keeping track of everything that happened in the house. Then one night she called Linda, terrified. I found something, she had whispered over the phone. In the basement. There's a room down there. But it's not just a room. What is it? Linda had asked. Rebecca's breathing had been ragged, panicked. There's something inside. And then the line went dead. Rebecca was never seen again. 8. The room below. I left Linda's apartment feeling colder than before. The tapes were a trap. Watching them did something to people. Rebecca had been pulled into whatever was waiting in that house. And now it was trying to pull me in too. I had one choice left. I had to go back. I had to find the room in the basement. And whatever was inside it. The house was waiting. And I knew it would not wait forever. Episode 4. The room that shouldn't exist. 1. The return to the house. I should not have gone back. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stay away. But I had to know. The tapes had shown me glimpses of something hidden beneath the house. A room that should not exist. Rebecca Lane had found it. And then she vanished. Now I was standing in front of the house again. It looked the same as before, old, rotting, its windows like hollow eyes staring at me. But something was different. The front door was open, like it had been expecting me. I swallowed hard, stepped forward, and crossed the threshold. The air inside was cold, and somewhere, deep beneath my feet, I heard it. A slow, rhythmic knocking, coming from the basement. 2. The stairs below. I moved carefully through the house, my breath shallow. Everything was the same as I had left it. Dusty furniture, peeling wallpaper, the static-filled TV. But the basement door was open wide now. Last time it had slammed shut. Now it waited for me. I stepped closer, peering down into the darkness. The stairs descended into complete blackness. The air smelled damp, rotten. I turned on my flashlight, and then I heard it again. The knocking, coming from deep below. I stepped onto the first stair. It groaned under my weight. Then the second, then the third. The knocking stopped, and a voice whispered from below. You are not supposed to be here. 3. The room that shouldn't exist. At the bottom of the stairs. The basement stretched out before me. Dust floated in the beam of my flashlight. Old furniture, broken crates, forgotten things from decades past. But the wall at the back was wrong. The concrete was newer than the rest of the basement, like someone had sealed something off. I ran my hand along the surface, my fingers brushing against something carved into the stone. Symbols. Strange, twisting symbols. I pressed my palm against the cold surface, and the wall moved. A seam appeared, a door I had not seen before. I grabbed the edge and pulled. The door groaned open, and behind it a narrow passage, leading deeper underground. Something waited inside, something waiting for me. 4. The darkness beyond. I stepped inside. The walls were different here, smooth, damp, wrong. The passage sloped downward, twisting as if the house had grown a second spine beneath it. My flashlight flickered, and then, at the end of the passage, a door. Heavy, old. I could feel the weight of it pressing against my mind before I even touched it. A deep, aching fear settled into my bones. Rebecca had come down here, and she had never left. I reached out, my fingers trembling. The door handle was warm, like someone had just been holding it. I turned it, and stepped inside. 5. The chair and the mirror. The room was small, too small, like the walls had been pushed inward, suffocating. The only thing inside was a chair, and a mirror. The chair sat in the center, facing the mirror, like someone had once been forced to sit and watch themselves. My breath caught in my throat. The mirror was wrong. Not cracked, not dirty, just off. Its surface rippled, slightly distorted, like it was watching me. I stepped closer, and in the reflection I saw her, Rebecca Lane. She sat in the chair, staring at me, but her mouth did not move. Instead, a voice whispered, "Help me." 6. Trapped in the reflection, I stumbled backward. The reflection stayed the same. Rebecca was there, but not in the room. Only in the mirror. Her eyes were wide, desperate. I felt a sharp pain behind my eyes, like something was forcing its way into my head. "You have to get out." Her voice was in my ears, but her lips did not move. She was not speaking. She was thinking. The mirror rippled again. I saw something move behind her. A figure. Tall, thin, its arms too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I stepped closer to Rebecca's chair. She did not move, did not blink, and then its hand reached toward her shoulder. I turned. There was no one in the room with me, only in the reflection. I looked back at the mirror. Rebecca's expression changed. She was no longer afraid. She was smiling, and her voice whispered again, "Now it's your turn." 7. The hands in the dark, I turned and ran. The room felt smaller as I moved, like the walls were pressing inward. The door slammed shut behind me. The passage was darker than before. My flashlight flickered again. I was halfway down the passage when I heard it. Footsteps behind me, coming fast, too fast. I did not look back. I reached the basement, my chest burning, my legs shaking. I ran up the stairs. The house felt different, like it had been waiting for me to return. I reached the front door, yanked it open, and then something grabbed my ankle. A hand, ice cold, long fingers digging into my skin. I kicked hard, breaking free. I did not stop running until I was inside my car. I locked the doors, my hands shaking, and as I looked back at the house, the basement door swung shut on its own. 8. The reflection follows. I did not go home. I checked into a motel on the other side of town. I locked the door, pulled the curtains shut. I needed time to think. I turned on the bathroom light and splashed cold water on my face. And then I made a mistake. I looked into the mirror. First, everything seemed normal. But then my reflection blinked. I had not. The air around me grew heavy. And in the mirror, Rebecca was there, standing just behind me, smiling. I turned. No one was there. I looked back at the mirror. She was closer now. Her lips moved. "You brought it with you." The motel lights flickered, and the reflection stepped forward. Out of the mirror, the room went dark. Episode 5, The Thing in the Reflection 1, the motel room. The room was dark. Too dark. The only light came from the flickering motel lamp. I stood frozen in front of the bathroom mirror, my breath coming in sharp gasps. She was there. Rebecca. But she was not just in the reflection anymore. She was stepping out. Her pale, hollow eyes locked onto mine, and a slow, twisted smile spread across her lips. I staggered backward, slamming into the bathroom wall. The reflection rippled like water. Then she was gone. But I was not alone. The air had changed. It was heavy now, pressing against my skin like something unseen was watching me, waiting. I turned off the light. The room plunged into darkness. And then, a whisper. Soft. Right beside my ear. "You should not have watched." 2. The static on the TV. I did not sleep. I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. That twisted smile. The thing in the reflection. The TV flickered in the corner of the room, casting eerie shadows across the walls. I had not turned it on, but it was playing. Static hissed from the speakers. Then an image flickered in and out. A chair. A mirror. That room beneath the house. And then a face. Rebecca's. Her eyes stared directly into the camera. Her lips moved. No sound came out. I turned up the volume, my heart pounding. A voice finally crackled through the static. But it was not hers. It was mine. "You brought it with you." The screen went black. The room went silent. I ran to the TV and unplugged it. But the screen stayed on. Something laughed from inside the static. 3. The call in the night. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed Linda Hastings. She answered on the first ring. "Daniel." Her voice was a whisper. "What happened?" "I saw her," I said. "Rebecca. She..." "Listen to me," Linda interrupted. "You need to leave. Now." "I did leave," I said. "But she followed me. She came through the mirror." Silence. Then Linda's voice. barely audible. "You let it out." I felt my stomach drop. "What?" "The tapes," Linda said. "They were never meant to be watched. They were a warning. But you played them." And now, a sharp click. The line went dead. And then my phone screen flickered. A message appeared. "Unknown caller. Look behind you." I turned. The motel mirror was still there. And inside it, Rebecca was smiling. But her eyes were not hers anymore. They were mine. For the man in the hallway, I ran. Out of the motel room, into the cold night air. The parking lot was empty. Dead silence. The whole motel felt wrong. Like it was no longer part of the real world. I walked toward my car, my breath fogging in the air. And then I saw him. A man standing at the far end of the hallway. Motionless. His back was turned to me. At first, I thought he was just another guest. But then I noticed his arms. Too long. Hanging limply at his sides. And his head. Slightly tilted. Unmoving. The air around me dropped. He knew I was there. But he did not turn. He just stood there. Waiting. For me. 5. The door that should not open, I backed away. My hands fumbling for my car keys. Then the motel door behind me clicked open. On its own. Slow. Deliberate. I turned back to the man. He was closer now. No sound. No movement. But he was closer. The door behind me creaked wider. An invitation. Or a trap. I had two choices. Run. Or step inside. I chose wrong. I stepped inside. 6. The mirror is not a mirror. The motel room was not the same. It had changed. The furniture was gone. The bed. The TV. The walls were bare. Except for one thing. A mirror. The same one from the house. The same one from the tapes. It stood at the center of the room. Waiting. Something moved inside it. Not me. Not Rebecca. Something else. The shape was wrong. Its head was too long. Its arms too thin. It was watching me. And then it moved forward. Closer. Toward the glass. Toward me. 7. The hands on the glass, I tried to back away. But my feet would not move. The air was too heavy. The thing in the mirror was almost touching the glass now. Then, a hand pressed against it. Not mine. Not Rebecca's. Something else. The glass rippled. And the thing whispered, "Come closer." My body moved on its own. Step by step. Closer. The mirror shook. Cracks spread across the surface. The thing on the other side opened its mouth. Too wide. And then the glass shattered. 8. The reflection is loose. I do not remember running. But I must have. Because the next thing I knew, I was outside. The motel door slammed shut behind me. I turned. The room was dark. Empty. But something had changed. The night did not feel the same. The world did not feel the same. I looked at my car window. At my reflection. And I saw it. My eyes. They were not mine anymore. Rebecca had smiled at me from the mirror. And now I was smiling back. Face that is not mine. 1. The eyes in the mirror. The moment I stepped away from the motel, I felt it. A shift. Something had changed. The air felt heavier, thicker, like I was moving through something unseen. But it was not the world that had changed. It was me. I could feel it in my skin. A sensation that crawled beneath my flesh, just out of reach. I reached my car and stopped. My hands were shaking. I had to see. I turned toward the car window, toward my own reflection. And there they were. My eyes. Or rather, not mine. The pupils were too large. The whites were too dim. The gaze wrong. Like someone else was looking out from inside my body. I opened my mouth, but the reflection did not move. It just smiled. And whispered, "We are one now." 2. The silence of the road. I did not scream. I did not run. I simply got in the car, locked the doors, and drove. There was nowhere to go, but I needed to be moving. Something inside me whispered, "Do not stop." So I listened. The highway stretched endlessly in the darkness. No other cars. No streetlights. Just me. And the thing inside me. The radio flickered on by itself. Static. Then a voice. "You let it out." It was Rebecca. I gripped the wheel tighter. "Where are you?" I whispered. Silence. Then, "It is inside you now." The static screamed. I swerved, nearly running off the road. Then the radio went silent again. But in the mirror, my reflection was still smiling. 3. The gas station that should not exist. The gas station appeared out of nowhere. One moment, there was nothing but road. The next, it was there. I did not remember pulling in. I just was. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly. The sign above the station had no name. The attendant behind the counter was watching me. Like he knew. Like he could see what was inside me. I got out of the car and walked inside. The bell above the door did not ring. The air smelled of something rotting. The man behind the counter spoke first. "You look lost." I hesitated. "Do you have a mirror?" His face remained blank. "There is no mirror here." I felt something shift inside me. Pressure. Like the thing inside me did not want to be seen. "You should leave," the man said, his voice flat. The lights flickered harder, and behind me I heard it. A whisper from the dark corner of the store. "He knows." For the man who did not blink, I turned toward the voice. There was no one there, just shelves of forgotten snacks and expired drinks. But I knew I was not alone. The man behind the counter still had not moved, still had not blinked. "You should leave," he repeated. But I could not. Something inside me refused. I stepped closer to the counter. The man leaned forward, and for the first time I saw his eyes. They were wrong, like mine, too dark, too deep, like they were hiding something. And then he whispered, "It is inside me too." 5. The thing behind the door at the back of the gas station opened by itself. The room beyond it was pitch black, a space that should not exist. Something moved inside. I could feel it. The man behind the counter exhaled shakily. "You should not have watched the tapes," he said. The thing inside me shifted. I felt its voice slither into my thoughts. "He does not belong here." The man reached under the counter, pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Slowly, he unwrapped it. A mirror, small, old, and the moment I saw my reflection, I felt it move inside me. The smile on my face widened, but I was not smiling. And then the lights went out. 6. The whisper in the darkness swallowed everything. But I could still hear him. The man behind the counter. His breathing was ragged. "You need to get out," he whispered. And then, a voice that was not his, not mine, not Rebecca's, something else. "You let it out." A chill crawled up my spine. The air grew thicker. I felt something move behind me. Then, a hand pressed against my shoulder. Cold. Wrong. I turned. There was nothing there. But in the darkness, the mirror in the man's hands still reflected something. Something watching me. Something waiting. Then the man screamed, and the world shattered. 7. The drive that never ends. I was on the road again. I did not remember leaving. The gas station was gone. Like it had never existed. But my hands were shaking, because now I could feel it. The thing inside me. Stronger. Hungrier. My phone buzzed. A text message. No number. No name. Just 2 words. "Look up." I glanced at the rearview mirror, and there I was, smiling. But this time it winked at me. 8. The end is not the end. I cannot run from this. Not anymore. It is inside me now, and I do not know how much time I have left before it takes over. Before I am nothing but a shadow behind my own eyes. I have to find Rebecca. She knows more than she has told me. She knows how this ends. But the thing inside me does not want me to find her. I can hear it whispering now. Stop looking. Stop remembering. Let go. I am losing myself. I can feel my hands moving, but I am not moving them. I can feel my lips smiling, but I am not smiling. The thing in the reflection is winning, and soon it will be the only one left. The house that breathes one, the road that does not end. I had been driving for hours, or maybe longer. Time felt warped, stretched too thin to hold onto. The road was the same no matter how far I went, an endless loop of dark highway, empty fields, and shadowed treetops that swayed without wind. I knew what was happening. I wasn't getting closer to anything. Something was bringing me in. And then, just as I felt the air inside the car thicken, the dashboard flickered. The radio, silent until now, crackled with static. Then a voice. Rebecca's voice. "You need to leave. You need to leave now." My heart stopped. I grabbed the radio dial, twisting it. "Rebecca? Where are you?" Silence. Then the static screamed. The headlights flickered once, twice, before the road in front of me changed. The house appeared. 2. The house that should not be. I do not remember stopping the car. But suddenly I was standing in front of the house. It rose from the ground like a monument to something forgotten. Victorian architecture, decayed but untouched as if time had tried to erase it, but the house refused to disappear. The windows were too dark. The front door stood slightly open, like a mouth waiting for me to step inside. Something in my gut twisted. The house wanted me here, and I had no choice but to go inside. 3. The breathing walls. The moment I stepped in, I felt it. The air was thicker, pressing against my skin as if the house had its own gravity. Then the walls moved. A slow, subtle rise and fall, like the house itself was breathing. Or maybe listening. I ran a hand along the wallpaper. It was damp, warm. Something pulsed beneath it. I pulled away. Then the door behind me slammed shut. I did not turn back. I knew there was no point. I was inside now, and it was aware of me. 4. The staircase that led to nowhere. The hallway stretched longer than it should. The floorboards creaked out of sync with my steps as if someone else was moving just behind me. Then I saw it, the staircase. It rose into the shadows, spiraling higher than the ceiling should allow. There was no top, no railing, no end, just darkness. Then footsteps, coming down, slow, steady. A shape moved in the darkness above, its outline shifting, wrong. I took a step back. The walls exhaled. I turned and ran. 5. The whispering doors. Every door along the hallway whispered. Soft, broken voices pressed against the wood. Some were crying. Some were laughing. One of them was saying my name. I stopped. The whispers stopped. A single, sharp knock echoed from the door beside me. My breath hitched. Then, from the other side, "Let me out." I ran. 6. The mirror that waited. I do not remember finding the room. But suddenly I was there. Rebecca's room. The same one from the tapes. The furniture was untouched. Dust floated in the dim light. And on the far wall, the mirror. Unbroken. Waiting. My reflection stood there, perfectly still. Too still. And then Rebecca appeared behind me. 7. The reflection that was not mine. I spun around. The room was empty. But in the mirror, Rebecca was still there. Her face was wrong. Too pale. Too stretched. And she was smiling. A slow, creeping smile that did not belong to her. Then, in a voice that was not quite hers, she whispered, "You should not have come." The glass rippled, like water, and she stepped forward. 8. The hand that pulled me and I did not move. I could not move. Rebecca, or whatever was wearing her face, reached out. Her fingers bent the wrong way, and then she grabbed my wrist. Cold. Too strong. I gasped as the mirror pulled me in. The world cracked. The air was gone. The floor vanished. And then I was inside. 9. The place between. I could not breathe. Not because there was no air, but because I did not have lungs anymore. I was not in a room. Not in the house. Not anywhere. The world was a reflection of itself, and I was trapped inside it. A shape moved in the darkness. A face. Not Rebecca's. Not mine. Something else. And then it spoke. "We have been waiting for you." Episode 8. The final tape 1. Trapped inside the reflection. I do not know how long I have been here. There is no time in this place. No past. No future. Only endless dark. And the mirror, a massive, towering surface of glass, stretching forever in all directions. I press my hands against it, cold, solid, but the reflection does not mimic me. I stare into my own eyes. They are not mine, and behind them something else watches. 2. The thing that watches. I am not alone. There is a presence in the dark. It moves at the edges of my vision, too fast, too slow, like it is trying to become something else. A whisper scrapes against my skull. "You have always been here." I spin around. Nothing. Then the voice again, closer this time. "You do not belong." I take a step back. The reflection does not. 3. The doors that should not exist. I start walking. The floor is not a floor. The walls are not walls. Everything shifts, bends, warps, like a dream I cannot wake from. Then a door appears. Old, wooden. It should not be here, but it is. I reach for the handle. The door slams open on its own. And behind it, Rebecca, or something that wears her face. 4. Rebecca's warning. She stands in the center of a dimly lit space, her face cast in shadow. She looks wrong, too thin, too still, too much like a memory that should not exist. Her lips move, but her voice is not coming from her mouth. "You should not have come." I step forward. She steps back, like I am something to be feared. "Rebecca," I whisper. "I came to find you." Her lips part, a slow, broken smile. "You cannot find what has already been taken." Then, she lifts her hand and points behind me. 5. The other me. I turn. and standing there is me, or something that looks like me. Same face, same eyes, but its smile is too wide, and its posture is too relaxed, like it has been waiting for this moment. Tilts its head. You do not belong here. The voice is mine, but it is wrong. Rebecca's voice trembles. It wants to take your place. 6. The switch I try to move. The space shifts, folding over itself like a collapsing dream. The air ripples. The other me reaches out. A cold hand closes around my wrist. The moment it touches me, my vision blurs. The dark shatters like broken glass, and suddenly, I am standing back in the house. Or at least I think I am. But something is different. 7. The wrong reality. The house looks the same. The walls, the furniture, the dust in the air. But the silence is different. It is heavier, artificial. I turn toward the mirror. My reflection is there, watching, waiting. I reach up, pressing my fingers against the glass. It does not move. My breath catches. I whisper, "Rebecca." The reflection smiles, and then it speaks. She never left. 8. The photo that should not exist. My blood runs cold. I take a step back. The house feels empty. No sound, no life, just me. And the thing in the mirror still smiling, still watching. I look around. Something is missing. Something is wrong. Then I see it. A photo album on the table. I open it with trembling fingers. Inside, a picture of me, or at least, someone who used to be me. But the edges of my face fade into static, as if I am being erased. 9. The final tape. I wake up in my car. Or at least I think I do. The road stretches out before me, endless, leading to nowhere. The house is gone. My hands tremble on the steering wheel. A voice echoes in my head. "You are too late." I turn on the car radio. Static. Then my own voice. "If you find this tape, do not listen." And then the sound of someone laughing. Not me. Not Rebecca. Something else. And the last thing I remember before the world slips away is seeing my own reflection in the rearview mirror. Smiling. But my hands are no longer on the wheel. Episode 9, the final warning one, the road that does not end. The road stretches endlessly. It is supposed to lead home, but I have been driving for hours and nothing changes. The same trees. The same broken white lines on the asphalt. I grip the steering wheel tighter. The air is heavy, thick with something unseen. I glance at the rearview mirror. My reflection watches me, but I am not moving my head. I turn my gaze forward, swallowing the growing fear in my throat. Something is very, very wrong. 2. The radio knows. The static hums through the speakers. I did not turn on the radio. A voice breaks through the distortion. It is mine. Do not trust it. My breath catches. The voice is followed by another sound. Something breathing. Not me. Not human. I slam the radio off. The sound does not stop. 3. The house that follows. I see it in the distance. The house. The same house. It was behind me when I left. But now it is ahead. Waiting. No matter how far I drive, it is always there. A cruel joke. A closed loop. A prison I did not know I entered. Or perhaps I never left at all. 4. The note that was never written. I stop the car. The keys feel ice cold in my hands. The house door is open. I step inside. Everything is exactly as it was. The dust. The stale air. The silence. And on the table, a note. Written in my own handwriting. Do not let it see you blink. I do not remember writing it. I do not remember leaving it. But my hands begin to tremble. Because the ink is still wet. 5. The thing in the mirror. I hear it before I see it. A slow, deliberate scrape, like nails against glass, coming from upstairs, from my bedroom, from the mirror. I force my feet to move. One step, another. The air feels thick, pressing against my skin. At the top of the stairs, the door is slightly open. A sliver of darkness, and then a whisper. Are you ready? 6. The reflection that no longer waits. The mirror stands in the center of the room. It should be against the wall. But it is not. It is facing me. The surface ripples, warps. Something moves beneath it. A hand presses against the glass from the inside. Fingers spread. Perfect reflection. Except it is not. I step closer. It steps back. You do not belong here. The voice is mine. The words are not. 7. The switch that cannot be stopped. The lights flicker. The air is buzzing, humming with a sound just beyond hearing. The reflection moves again. But I do not. It lifts a hand. My hand. But I did not move. A deep, cold dread settles in my bones. This is not my reflection. I am its. 8. The smile that seals my fate, the mirror begins to crack. Thin, jagged lines, like veins, like fractures in reality. The reflection watches, waiting, tilts its head, smiles. The glass shatters. A rush of cold air slams into me, knocking me back. The reflection steps forward. No, not a reflection. Me, or something that looks like me. It exhales for the first time and whispers, finally. 9. The final warning. I wake up in a hospital. Bright lights, white sheets, beeping machines. A nurse smiles down at me. You are lucky to be alive, she says. I try to speak. Nothing comes out. My voice is gone. My body feels wrong, like it is not mine. And then I see it, across the room, in the mirror above the sink. My reflection is watching me, smiling. It raises a hand. I do not. And then it mouths the words I will never forget. You should have never looked. The mirror cracks, and everything goes dark. Episode 10. The final revelation 1. The stranger in the mirror. I do not speak. I cannot. The hospital room is cold, sterile, too white. The fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting an unnatural glow over everything. The nurse is still talking, but I cannot process her words, because across the room, in the mirror above the sink, my reflection is smiling at me, and I am not smiling. I try to move, but my body feels wrong, like I am wearing a skin that does not quite fit. My fingers twitch. My breath is shallow. My heartbeat sounds offbeat, too slow, too deliberate. I force myself to sit up. The nurse notices my unease. You need to rest, she says kindly. But how do you rest when you are not sure you are still yourself? 2. The voice on the phone. I am discharged from the hospital a day later. The doctors say I was found unconscious on the side of the road. They say I must have suffered from exhaustion, dehydration, maybe even mild hypothermia. They do not understand. I do not tell them about the mirror. I do not tell them that when I looked into it this morning, my reflection moved just a little too slowly. I do not tell them that when I blinked, it did not. Instead, I take the prescribed pills, sign the discharge papers, and step outside into the cold air. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Unknown number. I hesitate. Then I answer. A voice I do not recognize whispers, it is not over. Click. The line goes dead. 3. The apartment that feels unfamiliar. Home. I should feel relieved. But as I unlock the door to my apartment, a sickening sense of wrongness settles into my bones. Everything looks the same. The furniture, the photos, the lingering scent of coffee in the air. But something is missing. Something I cannot quite name. I check the mirror in the hallway. My reflection stares back, expressionless, too still. I turn away, my stomach twisting. And that is when I hear it, the scratching. From inside the mirror. 4. The note that should not exist. I do not sleep. I sit at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, watching the hallway mirror. Waiting. The scratching does not stop. At 3:33 a.m. I find a note on my nightstand. I did not write it. I do not know who did. The words are scrawled in my own handwriting. Do not answer the door. I stare at the note, my hands shaking. Then knock. Knock. 5. The thing that waits outside. A slow, deliberate knock. I freeze. The air in the apartment tightens like it is alive and pressing down on me. Knock. Knock. Louder this time. I step toward the door, barely breathing. The peephole is dark. There is no one there, but I can feel it. Waiting. Watching. A voice whispers from the other side, let me in. 6. The eyes in the dark. I back away from the door. The knocking stops. Silence stretches, thick and suffocating. Then I see it, the hallway mirror, the reflection of my front door, and the thing standing in front of it. Not a person, not even a shadow. A distorted shape, tall and wrong, its head tilted unnaturally to the side. Its eyes are empty voids, and they are locked directly on me. The knocking starts again, but the thing in the mirror does not move, because it is already inside. 7. The recording that should not exist. I do not sleep. I do not move. I do not breathe too loudly. At dawn, my phone buzzes again. A notification, a voice memo, from my own number. With trembling hands, I press play. Static. Then, my own voice. It is too late. The recording ends. The knocking stops, and the air goes silent. 8. The final choice. I stand in front of the mirror. I know what I have to do. I pick up the hammer from my tool drawer. I raise it high. The thing in the mirror tilts its head. Like it is amused. Like it is waiting. I bring the hammer down. Glass shatters. Darkness spills out like liquid, swallowing the room, swallowing me. And I understand. I was never supposed to leave, because I never truly escaped. 9. The reflection that walks free somewhere. Someone else wakes up. In a different body. In my apartment. They stretch. They blink. And for the first time, they feel real. They smile. Because they are me now. And I am gone. Lost. Trapped. Forever.